All right, so what we're going to do this week is we're going to be reviewing solving equations. And we're going to start with reviewing solving one-step equations with addition and subtraction. So this is kind of jumping back into first semester a little bit and looking at what we did with solving equations. It's a good thing to review because it's a basic content knowledge for algebra for next year. So when we're solving one-step equations, remember a one-step equation might look something like this. Let's say we have m plus 5 equals 10. Okay, now remember, a lot of you are going to look at this and go, well, duh, m is 5. Okay, that's cool. But let's kind of review the process of how you get there so that when you get things with negatives or maybe fractions and decimals that you can't just automatically figure out by looking at it, you know the process. And the process that we do every single time is to draw that line. Okay, we draw that line because we want to isolate the variable, and isolating the variable means we want m to be all by itself. M does not like anybody else on the island with him, so we've got to get rid of that plus 5. And remember, to get rid of whatever's on the same side as a variable, you use the inverse operation. And the inverse operation is the opposite operation of what's happening. So in this case, we're adding 5, and to get rid of it, we want to subtract 5. And if we subtract it from one side, we have to subtract it from the other side. It's like a balance that has to be equal on both sides. If you do something to one side, you have to do it to the other side. And remember how we just kind of cross that out, because a positive 5, if you have a positive 5 and you take away that 5, you have 0, okay? So that just cancels out. We don't have to write the 0. But remember, we still have this m down here. We've got to bring it down here, bring down our equal sign. We can extend that line if we want. And then 10 minus 5 is going to be 5. So my answer is m equals 5. I can always test that by putting my 5 back into my original equation and testing it. If I put my 5 back in where the m is, I get 5 plus 5 equals 10. Well, does 5 plus 5 equal 10? Yes, it does. So we've done that correctly. Okay, so that's just a basic, that was solving a one-step equation. It was an addition equation, and so we used the inverse operation of subtraction to solve for the variable. You might have one that has subtraction in it. So let's say we've got n minus, I don't like that n very much, n minus 7 equals 25. So again, the first thing that we want to do always is to draw that line. So I'm going to draw that line, and I know now that I want to solve for n by isolating the variable. That means I've got to get rid of that minus 7, okay? So if I'm subtracting 7, I want to do the opposite, and the opposite of subtracting 7 is to add 7 to it. Okay, it's kind of like saying if the temperature is negative 7 outside and then it goes up 7 degrees, it's now 0. Okay, so if I'm subtracting 7, I can counter that by adding 7, and that just cancels it out. That leaves my n. Don't forget to bring your n down there. But since I added 7 to that side, I also have to add it to that side. 5 plus 7 is 12. Carry my 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. N equals 32. And if I plugged this back into my original equation, I would get 32 for my n. It would become 32 minus 7 equals 25. If you test that, and you actually take 32 minus 7, it does give you 25. Therefore, we've done this correctly. Okay? That's the very basics of it. You might get some that look a little different. For instance, you might get something that looks like this. Oops, that was a good catch. 15 equals m minus 2, okay? No biggie. Just because I've got the m minus 2 on the other side of the equation doesn't make a difference. You still draw your line through that equal sign. And then I know I have to get rid of whatever's on the same side of the variable. And in this case, this minus 2 is on the same side of the variable. So I've got to get rid of that by doing the opposite, which is adding 2. And when I do that, I have to do it to both sides. That leaves me right here with my m equals 15 plus 2 is 17. I can test that by taking that 17, putting it back where the m is. 17 minus 2 would give me 15 on that side, and 15 equals 15 is correct. I've done it correctly. You also might have something that looks like this. Let's get that out of the way. I hope that wasn't in the way through all my examples, because that's going to be a bummer. Let's say I had something like this. A negative 5 plus p equals 10. And now you're like, I can already hear these questions out there. Is that a negative 5 or a minus 5? Okay, well, it's actually a negative 5, and you're adding it to the p. So if I'm adding negative 5 to the p, I've got to add a positive 5 to get rid of it. So I'm basically just adding a positive 5 to get rid of that. Oop, no, don't forget to draw your line. Okay. So if I have a negative 5 and then I add a positive 5 to it, that's going to cancel that out. That leaves me just with this positive p that comes down. And then p equals 10 plus 5, which is 15. And if I plugged that in there, negative 5 plus 15 in my calculator, I would get a positive 10. So I know I've done it correctly. Okay? So let's try one more. And let's see, maybe you have something like this. A negative 10 equals m minus 2. All right, so I draw my line, always the first thing I do. And I know that on this side I've got a minus 2 I've got to get rid of. To get rid of the minus 2, I'm going to add a positive 2 to both sides. Cancels that out. I bring my m down, my equal sign. Negative 10 plus 2, if you put it in your calculator, if you can do it in your head, it's going to be negative 8. And if I plugged in this negative 8 right here for my m, negative 8 minus 2, okay, is going to give you negative 10. So we did it correctly. You would see that in your calculator, or you can just think of it again. If it's negative 8 outside and it drops another 2 degrees, okay, so you're subtracting another 2 positive, 2 degrees from it, it's going to drop 2 more degrees. You're going to have a new temperature of negative 10 outside. Hopefully that helps you with your homework. I'm assigning you a Google form. Go ahead and submit those answers online. You're just typing in the answer, the number, okay? So don't put any spaces or anything. I've got it so that it'll grade it on just the number you put in. So if it's a positive number, you just put in your positive number, no spaces. If it's a negative number, put a minus and then the number, no spaces. Don't put m equals or n equals or anything like that. Just the number, just the answer that is the number. And it should automatically grade it for you. If you think it graded it wrong, or you think you accidentally put a space in or something and it didn't grade it correctly, you just let me know. All right, you guys have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.